Congressman Hurt, welcome to Constituting America's Constitutional Chats podcast. We're going to go to you for opening comments, talk a little bit about how the House floor works and the importance of the House of Representatives in general, and then we're going to go to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm really just so delighted to be with you all today. And I really, from my time at Liberty University, I really came to appreciate something that I guess I already knew, something that I guess we all know, but that is just how important it is to engage with students and to make sure that students have all the information that they need as young, budding citizens. Make sure they have all the information that they need to know about how we got to where we are and why things work the way they do, in a representative government. And so I really salute this organization and salute all of you who are a part of it, as the students that are a part of this panel. One of whom I think Wyatt is planning on being a U.S. history teacher. That's just fantastic. Something so important. But I also really appreciate those who have joined us on the call. And I understand there are a lot of students. And so I'm really thrilled to be invited and to be a part of this next hour. I thought I would just start off by talking a little bit about the House of Representatives, the Congress, and sort of how we got to where we are. And then I really look forward to digging into sort of how the House floor works and how the whole legislative process works. But you may have noted, you may have read somewhere or seen on the television that on Sunday we celebrated the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech, which of course was before the Revolution. It was in 1775. It was 10 years after he had given the Stamp Act speech in 1765 in Williamsburg. But I point that out to say that the Constitution and how it operates now, that was a long way away in 1775. And so you stop and you think about what drove our founders to create a system of self-governance that allowed for maximum freedom in the context of some of the good things that government can bring to people as sort of a social contract. So that speech was one of the fuses that lit the revolution, and something that we should celebrate as we prepare to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. Of course, the Declaration of Independence came. That too, like Patrick Henry's speech, was really a promise in many ways. It was not a form of government. It was a Declaration of Independence and a promise that was based on pledges of lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. And so you go through the revolution, right? And then once you get through the revolution, once there's peace in 1781, now what? Now what do you do? And of course, the country was working originally on the premise or under the Articles of Confederation. And I think over the course of the revolution and during the first few years of our country, I think that the deficiencies in those Articles of Confederation became clear. And so in 1787, that's when the Constitutional Convention began, and those debates are critical to understand, why we have three branches of government, why we have a system of federalism. I often say that really, if you want to know what protects individual liberty more than anything in our Constitution, it is those separation of powers. It's the difference between Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. Today, we're going to focus on Article 1, but you stop and you think about the genius of making sure that the power of government was not concentrated in any one branch, and that the power is diffused not just across three branches, but also between the federal government, the state government, and the local government. And because that power is so diffused, that I think, again, gives each of us as citizens a remarkable amount of power. And it protects, it also protects us from an overbearing government. Um, the Constitution, of course, was adopted in 1789, and that's really when the hard work began, right? Is in those constitutional debates. And so I love Article One branch. As Kathy said, I was elected after serving in the House of Delegates and the House of and the Virginia Senate for 10 years. I had the great honor of representing Virginia's 5th District in here in Virginia. A fantastic, largely rural district from southern the North Carolina line all the way up to Fauquier County outside of Northern Virginia. It is a district that was represented its first member of that represented Virginia's 5th District was James Madison. So you can see that I had that I like to say it was all downhill after that, which is true. And I would also say that, when he was first elected, he ran against James Monroe, for only time I think that two future presidents ran against each other. But he was elected to the House. And why is that important? Because we had a Constitution, but we didn't have a Bill of Rights. And if you'll remember that in the time that the Constitution was being debated, James Madison just said, look, if you will just adopt this thing. George Washington went along with it. He got enough people to go along with it. The states went along with it. But he said, if you'll just adopt this, we'll take care of your concerns in a Bill of Rights. And so James Madison had to get elected to the House so that he could then go to Philadelphia and argue that a Bill of Rights should be adopted. And so that's, we roll off all of our rights, right? The First Amendment rights, the Second Amendment rights, the Fourth Amendment rights. Those all come from the Bill of Rights. And so you can't really underestimate or overestimate how important James Madison was. And the idea that I got to sit in his seat for 6 years was amazing. Built into that separation of powers is a legislative process that we're going to talk about today. But that legislative process, again, gives checks and balances across the spectrum. So in order to protect the individual rights of citizens, to make sure that laws are fully representative of the things that the people want. And I think you all talked some about that, but that is the goal. You want stuff that comes off the House floor, goes to the Senate, goes to the president to reflect the will of the people. And again, my bias because of my background is the House of Representatives and the House, because it really is the voice of the people. And so I really look forward to this discussion. Again, Kathy and Janine and team, thank you for allowing me to participate. I hope this will be interesting and hope it'll be useful to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that great overview. And I'm so glad you brought up the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's great speech. That was quite a celebration that I think went on for that. And it was just a really great, I guess,
Yeah.
historical milestone for us to honor and mention today.
Yeah,
So,
and if you ever if you want to go see where it happened, it's at St. John's Church in Richmond. You can just drive right up, walk right in.
I've been there. They've got great reenactors there that reenact the speech. So it's wonderful. So Janine, I know you've got a lot of questions. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Congressman Hurt. And I thank you for your service as well to our country. How long was that speech? Patrick Henry's speech was lengthy. That one particular, "Give me liberty and give me death." Wasn't it?
I don't know how long it was, but I know that the however many word "give me liberty, give me death," it gets summed up into those 6, doesn't it? But I think that was the fashion of the day was, or I don't know if fashion's the right word, but the folks would just give these speeches that went on forever, and they were just full of energy. And I know you're an actress, and I would imagine
and eloquent, yeah,
eloquent, right?
Yeah. Yes, I get accused of giving monologues quite often. It's just like I tend to be rather verbose myself, but they were eloquent and and educated and boy, wouldn't it be, it's always fun to think, if you had a dinner party and could invite anybody from the past, who would you invite? And something tells me you would invite Patrick Henry
I
to your
really
dinner
would.
table.
Oh, and Patrick Henry has always been a hero of mine. He was a legislator in 17. Mentioned the Stamp Act speech, which I think you could reasonably say was the fuse that lit what became the revolution. This is 11 years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
He gave the Stamp Act speech on his 29th birthday. So, I think about what I was doing when I was 29. I don't think I was giving the Stamp Act speech. You stop me to think about how powerful that was, how important it was, and but what I love about the story, one of the books that is written about Patrick Henry, one of his biographies, talks about how when he was making that speech in Williamsburg in 1765, that hanging in the doorway. Stop and think about that. Hanging in the doorway of the old Capitol, which you can go to Williamsburg and see the rebuilt Capitol. It's not the same one, but it's built exactly, and so you can go in and you get a sense of what it was like when they were meeting in Williamsburg. But he gave that speech, and they say Thomas Jefferson was a law student who he studied under George Wythe at what became William and Mary Law School. But he was a student there, and said that Thomas Jefferson was hanging out in the doorway while Patrick Henry made that speech, and was inspired by it. Which you just stop and think about that for dramatic effect. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, well, from a cinematic standpoint of lanky, Thomas Jefferson just leaning in the doorway, listening. Yeah, that's quite the moment. Yeah, maybe we need to make that a short film or something. Well, anyway, okay. Let's talk about getting a bill across the threshold to a vote. We've talked about committees. Some committees are large, some committees are small. We talked about the fact that the House leader is the one, or the chair leader. I guess it's the chair leader will kind of pick which bills. I mean, if you have 75 people on a committee, he or she picks which ones will actually be winnowed down and actually discussed, which is interesting. So it's sort of like the survival of the fittest. Which idea of a constituent from which state, from all over the country, is going to actually make it into like the top 5 on American Idol,
Right.
to finally get to the floor. And so let's talk about, Kathy was talking about, once it goes through committee, it has to go to a rules committee. And I think it would be interesting if you would talk about the rules committee, and also Robert's rules of order. That's really fascinating too, which is my understanding is the rules of order, when they gavel and do this and that's sort of the rule book. But talk to us about the rules committee, please.
So, so I have sort of an interesting background, perhaps a bias, having served in the Virginia House of Delegates. So, which is obviously the corollary to the House of Representatives in Congress, but at a state level. And so, you have 50 states, and each one has a legislature. I think all of them except one have a bicameral legislature. So there's a corollary to the House process. And in the states, you're dealing with a lot less money. You're dealing with fewer constituents. Probably maybe not people who have the political the national media profile that you have in Washington. But as a consequence, it was always my experience that the House of Delegates, at the state level, it's much more inclusive. Every bill gets a hearing at some point, whether it's a committee or otherwise. Every bill, once it hits the floor, gets a debate. Gets unlimited amendments, and if it makes it through the committee process, that is. And I say all that to say that the House of the process in the House of Representatives at the federal level is much more controlled. And maybe that's necessary because of the number of constituents. You're talking about 330 million versus whatever it is in Virginia now, 70 million. That's not right, but like 8 million, 9 million. And so there are different pressures, but generally speaking, as a bill goes to committee in the House of Representatives. I was on the Financial Services Committee, so we'd have a bill. We would push it out to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee would then, or we push it out of committee, and then the Speaker and the Majority Leader would decide who gets to, what bills go, to your point, which bills get to go to the House floor. Before it could go to the House floor, it has to go back to the Rules Committee or to the Rules Committee. Very, very powerful, and they make all the decisions about the substance of the bill that's going to the floor, or the substance of the amendments that are going to the floor. Then who can speak on the floor too, and then limit debate. So there are all these rules that get put in place so that when it gets to the House floor, there are the Rules Committee rules that were created for that bill that have everything to do with the substance and the debate time, and who gets to speak, the number of amendments. All those things are completely tightly controlled. With, over top of that, you have the parliamentary rules, which are supposed to govern the body the House of Representatives as a whole. And that's Robert's Rules of Order. I think Jefferson Manual also was consulted. And interestingly, there's a whole, as issues come up, there's a whole, it's not case law, but in the same sense of a court hearing, there's precedents. And so precedents has application when you have controversial issues that come up. But that's sort of that. But that's where it starts, is the Rules Committee.
The process. Let's talk about who is on the Rules Committee and who picks who gets to be on the Rules Committee. And I take it's for 2 years,
Yes.
which is the term
Great question.
of a representative in the House. And because that's really interesting. If someone has that much power to pick, who gets to speak and what the amendments are and what the body of it looks like, that, as you say, that's a very powerful committee, actually, the Rules Committee. How do you get on the Rules Committee?
It's an extremely important role, and the Speaker of the House, for the majority, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, in this case, in current form, it would be Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House. He, at the beginning of every session, those members are named, and there's a whole process for naming committee members, but the Speaker has an outsized role in choosing who they are. Usually, if the leadership is aligned, then usually the leadership will will be in the same page. A lot of it has to do with seniority, but that is a very, very powerful position. Interestingly, and maybe this is off in the weeds, but interestingly, unlike the Virginia legislature, a state legislature, in Washington, the Speaker picks the members for the majority, and the minority leader picks the members, and the minority party gets to pick the members for the minority members on the committee. Whereas in Virginia, the Speaker gets to pick everybody, and that's when you stop and think about the effect of that over time, it means you're going to have polar folks on the committee because each gets to pick their own team. Whereas in Virginia or in other states, I'm sure the majority, the Speaker gets to pick everybody. And so you would end up over time having members that are more probably closely aligned than on opposites. And you look at kind of what we got right now in Washington, and there's a whole lot of folks on the opposites.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I will say one of my favorite words and my favorite things in the world is federalism. I think federalism is amazing. Not just, as you said, separation in the actual Constitution between the House and the legislative and executive and judicial branch, but also the the separation of powers between state and then local government. I find all of that to be, I think that's the genius. One of the geniuses in the exceptionalism of America is the federalist aspect of our government. But really interesting. I guess in closing here, because I have to toss in about 27 seconds, but so in what I call the national government in Washington, D.C., the majority leader he oversees it, but is it 50-50? Is it the majority gets a certain amount and the minority gets a certain amount, or does the majority get, is it
Oh, that's
3,
interesting.
4,
The numbers,
quarter,
you
or
mean
is it
on the
50,
Rules
50?
Committee? Is that what you mean on the Rules
Mm-hmm.
Committee?
What you said, the minority gets to pick, and
Yeah. So,
yeah,
so,
I
so
hope you can hear
usually,
me.
and
Can y'all
I
hear me
can't
now?
remember what it is, and it
The
probably changes
yeah.
change from session to session, depending on the speaker and if they want to jam the other side. That balance kind of moves. I don't know if Kathy remembers from her time on the Hill, but it's not 50-50. That's for sure. It is prorated, but sometimes, but theoretically you could have nobody so I think the majority, there's a resolution that is adopted at the beginning, which is sort of an organizational resolution at the beginning of every session, and that's when that would be fought out over that. So it's not 50-50, but there's a ranking member. The ranking member is kind of the equivalent, but in the minority of the chairman. Doesn't have the same any power compared to the chairman of the committee, but that's how that's done.
And all the behind, I would love, there's a few things I'd love to be on a fly in the wall on a casting session. I think that would be just really interesting to watch all, 50 actors come in and audition for the same role. But I would also love to be a fly in the wall in like a rules committee, because when you're picking who you want who's going to get to go to the floor and actually speak for the bill, there have to be like a ton of political diplomatic aspects to making that decision. So-and-so has been here longer, and this person's going to get upset if you do that. And that's where compromise in politics, there really is an art to it. So that would be really fascinating to be in that room. or I would also love to be in the State Department. Like when the State Department goes in, this is completely in the weeds, but when say the State Department goes to a foreign country and they all go in and have those meetings, I would love to be a fly on the wall in those rooms too.
Right.
When, we're negotiating with Putin or whoever it may be. I thought, oh, wow, that'd be really interesting to know what's said before that. But anyway, thank you for that. And thank you for your service to Virginia and then to our country. Are you from Virginia in closing here, or
Yeah,
Mississippi?
I'm from
Because I know you
Virginia.
went to school
No,
in
I'm from
Mississippi.
Virginia, and
Pardon?
we've been here for a while. I'm not very far from where I actually live in a house right across the street from where I grew up. So we haven't gone very far.
Oh, there you
But
go.
I will tell you
Well,
this.
I'm Texas. I left. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it really, it is important for the students on the call. To me, being able to represent your fellow citizens in a legislative position, it's really such an honor. And so, and it's hard work. And you look at it today, and good people, probably you're going to have a hard time getting good people to want to do it. I think when you look at some of the mess that we find ourselves in, but it's more important now than ever that you have good people who are willing to do it and to be honest and straight and strong, and also bring with them a rock solid understanding of our founding. And so again, I commend you, Janine, for
The rule
for
book.
your founding of this. So
Thank you. Well, it's an important mission that we're all on here together with Kathy and Wyatt and Jewel and Jorn. So, all right, speaking of that, I'm going to pass. Jewel, take your full 10 minutes. Wyatt, take your full 10 minutes. Okay. Because I went a little over, but thank you so much. Thank you, Robert.
thank you, Janine. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Janine. This is Jewel Gilbert with Constituting America. Happy to be talking to Mr. Robert Hunt about the House floor, really, and again on our series about bills. And it's fascinating. There's so much minutia, so many twists and turns, so many nooks and crannies. It's been amazing to work with Kathy, of course, because she knows many of those things, and you hear these insights, and it's like, wow. we understand the mission of the government and the theory of the government, but at the end of the day, someone actually has to do the things. And it could be as the simple logistics are also important. So I also have a question about, again, if you could just kind of re-say it maybe really quickly. When a bill is actually being voted on the House floor, what is the like 3-second answer of what's that process?
Well, what I would say is, and it's important, what the purpose is for all the members to hear a presentation of the bill, of the legislation being considered. So you've got the legislation, it's come out of committee, it's come through the Rules Committee. And so the purpose is for all members to be able to sit together on a floor and to be able to have the bill presented. Usually it's presented by the chairman of the committee, that it came out of. And they present the bill to everybody on the floor, and then you have an opportunity to amend it if you have things that you think, oh, I think that we can make this a little bit better. So why don't we offer this little change, and we'll put that to a vote, and we amend the bill. The other aspect of that's integral to having the bill go through the process is debate. You have to be able to ask questions. There's a whole ability of any member to ask questions of the proponent of the bill, whether it's the chairman or the actual person that put it up. And then the final thing after debate, of course, is the vote. And I would say that that whole process, I think, signifies this. It signifies that it may have been a constituent's idea. It may have been a member's bill that member formulated and took a constituent's idea and then put it onto paper and then introduced it, got it through committee. Now it's on the House floor. But at the end of the day, make no mistake, this is not about the constituent. It's not about the member who introduced it. It's about the will of the body. So when that thing is voted on, if it's voted out, that belongs to the people who are represented there, both people who voted for it and voted against it, honestly. And so it's a really great process. And of course, it repeats itself in the Senate. And then if there aren't differences between the two bills, each body has its own prerogatives. But if there is no difference between the two bills, then it goes to the president for signature. And that's the same way it is in Virginia. But the process is designed to be open. In my opinion, it should be. I think it was contemplated to be open. I don't know that it's very restricted now because of the Rules Committee and some of the restrictions that we talked about earlier. But that's the overall purpose, is to give all the members of the body who represent the entire country on that floor, 435 districts, they each get to hear it. And I can talk a little bit more about how it actually works, but that's the philosophy of the legislative process on the House floor.
Yeah, so I do want to get into some of how it's working today. We know that the body has grown. We know that there's fierce partisanship. We know that the media narratives and the way that social media has also changed the way that we exert political will. We know that the way the founders designed the government and the way that we are operating the government are not always exactly the same, and we do fight for those ideals that we hope to. So can you talk about maybe some of the functional, are there any changes? First of all, what are some issues that are happening today on the House floor with the bill that would frustrate an open process of open debate representing the constituents' will on a bill? So what are some things that may be frustrating that? And are there any changes in the structure of what's happening on the House floor that would help, or is it really just that's not an issue? It's more so we'd have to change maybe political will and things like that.
Well, what you just said at the end, I think, is the most important part, and that is that as the rules exist now, do they exist in a way that you could have a more open process? And the answer is yes. We have the tools. It does come down to political will, and it comes down, and that in and of itself is the will of the body. And If you're a constituent, you don't like what you see is going on in Washington, you don't like the way the process works, you do have a remedy, and that is to get a new member of Congress. And that's our founders. Our founders gave us that. And so that does exist. That always exists. If you don't like the way it's going, you don't like the way it's being carried out, the constituents across the country, all they have to do is look in the mirror, because we as a people, maybe not individually, but we as a body politic, we voted for these folks. So if we don't like, and that in the way is the genius, and it's not, it's genius. It's a genius of our founding, but it's not easy, and it's not always pretty. And so I start off by saying that, yes, the tools are there for you to have a more open process that I think better reflects the will of the American people, and is really, frankly, designed to bring people together more than just have people on polar opposites of every issue and just yelling at each other all the time. So that's there. But a couple of the sticking points, well, Janine brought up the Rules Committee in and of itself. So there is a Rules Committee. And I have the benefit of having served in a state legislature that I think was far more functional than what we have in Washington. And I think this is probably true. I haven't studied other state legislatures, but I know a lot about the Virginia legislature. In Virginia, you have a rules committee that adopts rules for the governance of the floor and the legislative process that applies equally to all bills. All bills. When you come to Washington, you find out that each bill has to go before the rules committee, and it gets its own rule. And we talked a little bit about that earlier. So not all rules apply equally. And so using the rules committee, the folks in power, the speaker and the majority leader, and the others who are influencing in that body, are able to tightly restrict the flow of legislation onto the floor, and are able to tightly restrict whether or not amendments, think about it, something so basic as to want to change a bill, amendments get offered, and whether or not they can be debated. Then you can limit the amount of time you have for debate, meaning, you don't have unlimited debate. In Virginia, you could offer all the amendments you wanted, as long as your colleagues would put up with you offering amendments. In Virginia, you were allowed to have unlimited debate until the members started waving their papers saying, please shut up, we don't want to hear from you anymore. You could it's a complete freedom in that regard, where you don't have those restrictions in Congress. And as a consequence, that limits freedom of debate. And it limits, if you're in the minority, it really limits your ability to affect or at least participate in the process. So
how much do you think that
Yep.
how much do you think that the Rules Committee, as currently exerts its power, frustrates this process of things?
Well, depends on who you are, right? If you're me as a citizen, I'm just a tax-paying citizen. I voted for my member of Congress, and he's up there representing me. It frustrates me to just as an American to think that this process has been restricted. But if you're the majority leader or the speaker, and you're or the chairman of the Rules Committee, I mean, you got a good thing going there, because you're able to restrict that debate. If you listen to the people, you've seen on the Republican side here in the last few years, even when I was there, you have Republicans who are always talking about regular order. And I talked about it when I was there. I mean, we don't have regular order when you have every bill gets to have its own little secret sauce that limits any debate and any amendment on the floor. And we're not we don't operate on what's called regular order. A lot of things get suspended and moved. And
how much does that do? And it does directly affect the votes for or against a bill. All of these things you're saying about the debates not being open, or the different rules around each bill, in your opinion, then that really does affect the way that the votes turn out?
I think, to me, I believe that if you have a good process, and it applies to everyone equally, you're going to have a better product at the end of the day that better reflects the will of the body. When you restrict it for whatever reason or however you restrict it, I just think that you're going to have a inferior product because you didn't have the buy-in. And that contributes to the polarity in our country, I think, is that when people don't feel like they got a fair shake, then that makes them less likely to support or cooperate with something that becomes law, that is the law of the land, but they didn't vote for it.
Yeah, I gotta pass. I have to pass here to why I 100% agree. Extremely disenfranchising if you ever see not the way you presented regular order, basically being the same rule applying to everybody. If that doesn't happen, then
where your parents raised you and your siblings, right?
Yeah, gonna be gonna be pretty angry, and that's definitely gonna make more polarization. It'll pass to Wyatt. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jewel.
Alrighty, yeah, it's Wyatt Hensley here.
Hey,
Very
Wyatt.
fascinating discussion. This really is. I didn't know that every bill had to go through the House Rules Committee and get their own set of rules determined.
It's a scandal.
Yeah.
I'm joking, but
But would you say that would kind of hurt the effectiveness too of Congress if they're spending a lot of time determining which rules each bill has to get their own separate rules?
well, I don't think you could ever probably accuse Congress of being effective. And
Oh.
I actually say that with all due respect. I think we're all probably a lot better off when it's not effective. Would be a just off the cuff funny remark. But yeah, of course it does. Well, though, that's a great question, Wyatt. And actually, you ask if it should be more effective. That's a great question because it goes to the heart of what I think, it's easy to make things effective. Just have a dictatorship, that if you want to make things efficient, that's dictators love efficiency. And frankly, a lot of your constituents like dictatorship. They don't want anything that's messy. And the more amendments you have, the more debate that you have, that tends to get messy. But that's what our founders gave us. They gave us a self-governance. And they said that Wyatt and Robert are both members of the House of Representatives, and they both get, even if they're of different parties, they both should be able to have a say in the process. And if there are more people who agree with me, then I win. If there are more people that agree with you, then you win. And that's the way it should be. I think that is Republican form of government at its greatest, is having majority rules, and the rules apply to everybody. So I think your question, I don't think that you intended to ask that to have it posed that way, but actually you get to the heart of it. It does make it probably less efficient. But what's the price of not having it be more open is that it's more restricted and less free. And again, it gives it concentrates power, takes it away from the individual members, and it concentrates power in the handful of people who are running the House of Representatives at any given time. That includes the Speaker. It includes the Majority Leader, the Whip, the House Whip, the three top guys in the House of Representatives. And frankly, from time to time, it also includes the Minority Leader and the Minority Whip, meaning that sometimes it's in the interest of the folks at the top to sort of kind of play footsie with the folks in the minority, because they're all kind of because that's a base of power. So you could argue that in many instances the minority leader is more powerful than an individual member of the majority party, and there's going to be some of that in a majority minority context, but that's also, I think, an interesting consideration.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. Thank you. So talking about the debate, so say the Rules Committee decides, there's a certain amount of time for debate. How is it determined who gets to Like who gets to ask questions? Can it be any member, or and then does it limit the amount of members who can?
Yeah, usually, um, so the way it works, I don't think they can limit the individual members, but the way they limit debate is they put a time limit on it. And they'll say, we'll give the majority gets 15 minutes and the minority gets 15 minutes. And then the person who is who is the president pro tem, who is the speaker for a time, which is what that means in some language, the person who's running the floor. And you need to understand this. And you know, when I say that this House process is built for all of the members to be able to have the presentation of the bill, all of the members on any give, just turn on C-SPAN if you ever want to see how all of the members are sitting there listening with rapt attention. In Virginia, in the House of Delegates, we were expected to be on the floor at 12 noon, and the speaker gavelled you in. If you weren't in your chair, he was going to send his chief of staff to come find you and find out why you're not on the floor. In Washington, nobody shows up to the debates on bills. They all, you know, maybe they're watching from their office somewhere. Maybe they're having somebody else watch it. But it's a little, but it tells you something. And maybe it's not all bad, but it tells you something that you don't have people sitting there listening to the debates. So anyway, so you have so when a bill is presented, the chairman presents it from their side, whoever's presenting it, majority, minority, they present their side, and then they allocate in minute increments. They allocate time. They say, I yield to the gentleman from Missouri. I yield to the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Hensley, 2 minutes so he can speak to this bill. And you may have it may be your bill. It may be a constituent's bill. It may be something that you really love or you really hate. And then, but the chairwoman, they take out of their 15 minutes, they take 2 minutes out of that 15 minutes that's been allotted to give to you. Now that means that you know that's necessarily limiting. So it limits the number of people who can speak. But the person who has the time at any given time has the power to kind of dole out the time as they want. But at the end of the day, when that 15 minutes is up, bam, they hit the gavel and you're done. It's time to vote.
Yeah, and then just quick, I was just kind of curious too. You are required to address members of Congress during a debate, right? By like the gentleman or all that.
Great question. You are not ever, and this is a very important rule that I think has come up through legislative process, through Jefferson's rule manual and the other rules that are out there, the other parliamentary process. No, that's a great question. You're not allowed to ever address, you should never address another member directly on the floor. What that means is you're always addressing the fellow members in the third party. So you're always addressing your remarks to the chair, who is either the speaker or the speaker pro tem for the time, because the speaker can designate the speaker. Mike Johnson doesn't sit up there all day and listen to this stuff. He appoints a speaker pro tem. I think I said president pro tem earlier, but it's speaker pro tem who could be a regular member. I got to do it from time to time. I got to do it when Barney Frank was thrown off the floor for disparaging another member
Wow.
he called another member I think he called him a liar, and he got thrown off for the day. It was and I got to preside over it. It was kind of fun. But anyway, a great interesting question that helps, I think, support the idea that you aren't having a face-to-face on the floor. You're going through the chair. The chair controls all the time. That's decorum. You know, it takes the heat out of it a little bit, right? You're not having a big fist fight on the floor. I think our founders knew about fist fights on the floor and such.
Yeah, very interesting and definitely a way to try to at least help keep it a little bit more civil during the
Correct.
legislative process. Probably my final question is, so when it does come time to vote, there are different ways of voting, correct?
Yeah.
Like if you would go in a little bit with a little time
Yeah.
that I have.
So you can do things by voice vote, which is chicken is being chicken, in my opinion. I mean, it happens all the time, but so good question. So everything is generally by majority. Sometimes there's super majorities that are required. On the House floor, you have in front of, on the back of the chamber, or really the front of the chamber, I should say, you have all there's a if you've ever been on the floor, it's really fascinating. They have all these panels that light up when it's time to vote. And so the voting is indicated by a green or a red light that goes up by your name on these panels, and so everybody can see. It's all recorded, and so when the speaker or speaker pro tem calls for the vote, then they open the roll, and then they're and it's funny in Virginia. I mean, the rolls would stay open for like 2 minutes because everybody's on the floor. The way it practically works is they open the vote and they get at least 20 minutes because people are coming from their offices or committee meetings to come to the floor to vote. They come on the floor. You don't have assigned seating, which is interesting. You have a card. You have like a ID card that you then go to. There are machines in the back of the chairs all scattered around the House floor, and you stick your card in that recognizes your ID, I guess, and then there's the buttons, and then you can press the button. Yes, no, or abstain are really the three choices, and so that's how the voting takes place. Now, you can do a voice vote on things that are uncontested, and but if there's a voice vote and you want to have it recorded, then you do something called call for the yeas and the nays. And then that can convert something that may have some objection from a voice vote to actually a vote on the actual machines that actually tallies the vote.
Yeah, and then one last quick question before I toss it over. Can they change their vote after they voted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, in fact, the guy that I ran against him he represented the 5th district before I ran. Well, I shouldn't say that, but yeah, they leave. You can change your vote, and you have a chance to come down to the well to change your vote actually after they close rolls. So you have a bunch of opportunities to change your vote if you want to. But the other thing they do is they'll leave the vote open. If the speaker wants a bill to go a certain way, then he's going to leave it open long enough to get the votes that he needs to get the bill done. And sometimes that means that it gets left open for an extraordinarily long time. And it's kind of embarrassing because sometimes some poor member will be off in the corner and he'll have a bunch of people pounding on him around him, and he'll go down there and change his vote, and it's kind of a walk of shame, but it does happen.
Yeah. Well, I apologize for going over for time, but thank you so much. It's been great discussion. And thank you so much for
Thanks,
being
White. Good
on
luck
and
to you
answering questions.
in your teaching career.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Wyatt and Jewel and Janine. Great questions. And Congressman Hurt, we're so appreciative of you being on today. We've got some really good audience questions lined up as well. But first, we're going to give a shout out to our listeners on Las Vegas's KKVV 1060 AM on the radio dial. KKVV airs Constituting America's Constitutional Chats on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific. So thank you to everyone in Las Vegas listening. We also want to thank Professor Alex Tokarov, who has students listening today. So thank you, Professor Tokarov. If you are a teacher or student with students listening, please drop it in the Q&A, and we'll try to give you a shout out before the end of the program. So Congressman Hurt, Gary Foreman has a really interesting question, and actually this is a question close to our heart here at Constituting America. How often does the volume of a bill, pages presented for a vote, greater than the time to read and comprehend it? Many remember Nancy Pelosi stating that Obamacare had to be passed to see what was in it. And before we go to Gary's question, I just want to mention Janine has been a great proponent of requiring members of Congress to read the bills before they vote on them. And she even has a petition called the Truth Act. She's walked the halls of Congress lobbying for that on several different occasions. And we have a favorite quote from Federalist 62 that says, it will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. From James Madison, your predecessor in the seat, Federalist 62. So what do you think about that?
I think it's a great question. And of course, these bills, these appropriations bills that are, 6 feet tall, members don't read them, and they have staff, and they first of all, they should read them, of course, every word. But the way it practically works is oftentimes when you have a big bill like that, you have staff that they'll have, staff will do it and then give them recommendations. No, I think it's a travesty that we've allowed that be uh, to be allowed. When I was there was a rule that I think still exists that was put in place that said no bill can come, as part of the struggle about regular order, there was a bill that came out that said no bill can be introduced without 3 days, unless of course we waive it, but typically it's supposed to be 3 days. And in Virginia, we had something in our Constitution called the single object rule, which means that a bill may not have more than one single object. That would make bills a whole lot smaller if you had that limitation.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the great question. Julianne Smith asks, explain what it means when someone on the floor asks, will the member yield? What does that mean and how does it work?
So if you have time, if the chairman on your side who's running your time, if the person who is presenting on the floor, you're given 15 minutes and you say, I'm going to yield 2 minutes to Mr. Hurt on this bill, and then Mr. Hurt gets to get up and he gets to talk. Well, the way you engage with the person who is controlling the time, if you want to debate, and this is probably the closest you get to actually a debate, because as under Wyatt's great question, everything has to go through the chair. So what that person says is who wants to question Mr. Hurt about this crazy assertion that he's making on the House floor, and then the member on the other side asks the chairman, said, would the gentleman yield for a question? Meaning, will you stop and be quiet so I can ask a question, but you're giving up your time. So you have to be sensitive to that. If you only have 2 minutes, you can only limit you can only give away a certain amount of your time. The smart thing is to usually say, yes, I'll yield, because you don't want to make it look like you're hiding something. Or you can say, I will yield in a minute, but let me finish the point that I'm making. That's another way you can sort of control it and not get broken up, because people are going to try to break you up when you're making a presentation. Good question.
Well, thank you. And Lewis White also wanted us to know that he says, Give Me Liberty, the Give Me Liberty speech is a 4-page speech on today's letter-sized printer paper. So thank you, Lewis, for letting us know that. And then we also had a question about what kind of business is done on the House floor. When members do come over to vote, are they talking to each other about legislation or trying to get co-sponsors, or talk about some of the dynamics that go on between members when they are on the House floor?
Yeah, again, I mean, the purpose of the floor is to bring everybody together to hear and to consider and debate and consider and then vote on a piece of legislation. So that's how our process works. But to your point, there's a huge amount of horse trading that goes on the floor at any given time. Because there aren't assigned seats, people kind of sit in clutches while something, especially if you have a series of votes and you just not one and done, there's a series of votes. Then you come and people kind of post on the floor or back in what they call the cloak room, where everybody hangs their cloaks, and there's a lot of business that goes on. So you're talking about how the outcome of this bill that's on the floor. You could be talking about other legislation that you might want to promote in committee or at another time or later in the day. So there's a whole lot of business that takes place. It's not in any way like a committee, but there is business that takes place in that regard. And then a lot of stuff that's not business.
Well, thank you. And we're right at the top of the hour. So we thank you so much for being on today. You were just a fantastic guest and
Oh, thank you.
know how busy you are. And we really appreciate your generous gift of time and wisdom for our listeners and for our students who are watching today and on our panel. So thank you. And we thank you to our audience. And next week, we're going to be talking about what goes on the Senate floor. So be sure and come back. Josh Helms is going to be our guest. He's a former chief of staff in the Senate leadership and has a very popular podcast called, the name of the podcast is Ruthless. So you'll be a great guest along with Jade West, who's a former Senate staffer as well. So we look forward to seeing y'all next week. And Congressman Hurd or Jewel or Wyatt, any closing words?
I just thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and really, I'm very hopeful about the future of our country. And it's because of folks who are educating themselves through means like this. And so I applaud what you're doing, Kathy, and thanks for the opportunity to be with you. And Jewel, Wyatt, great questions. Thanks so much.
Well, thank y'all so much. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.